17 seconds. That's all it took for Jasmine Crockett to turn a packed congressional hearing into a crime scene, leaving a former president pale, shaking, and fighting for words. With 31 names hidden behind black bars and one blood-red envelope in her hand, she faced down power like it owed her a debt. The cameras caught every breath, every flinch. What truth could be so explosive that the most powerful man in America looked like he'd just seen a ghost? 3 red tally lights, blink, 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 glowing like sniper scopes aimed at the heart of the chamber. The air feels icy, a whoosh running down the spines of those inside, not from the vents, but from the weight of what's about to happen. Papers rustle softly in the hands of aides, a flimsy disguise for the way their eyes keep darting toward the witness table. From the hallway, the measured click, click, click of heels echoes like a countdown clock. Not hurried, not hesitant, precise. Thump, the door swings open. Jasmine Crockett steps in. No aides, no stack of notes, no water bottle. Just a blood-red envelope tucked under her arm, clutched like a detonator, waiting for the right touch. Her eyes don't scan the crowd. They peer straight through it, locking on the man across the table, Donald Trump. Trump leans back, a slow smirk curling across his face. It's the same smirk that once sealed deals and disarmed opponents. But today it doesn't reach his eyes, and Jasmine notices. In Kansas, a retired Marine straightens toward his TV. In New York, a mother pulls her daughter closer, clicks the remote, and turns the volume up. Microphones sit on the desk like black landmines primed to capture the first sound of detonation. Jasmine slides into her seat, creak places the envelope on the polished wood, and taps it once. Tap. Trump's fingers twitch. Then a tiny, almost invisible movement. He adjusts his tie with a flick. Most wouldn't notice. But here, where every blink is currency, it's a tell. For a man who claims to fear nothing, this is the first crack. Jasmine doesn't speak. She lets the silence stretch taut as a wire ready to snap. Somewhere behind her, a camera whirs as the lens zooms in, framing her hand next to the envelope, and his eyes watching it like it might explode. The chair hems, but no one looks at him. Every gaze in the room is tied to that invisible tripwire between them. Across the country, veterans, mothers, and survivors lean toward their screens. A whisper slips into the mic. Psst. She's about to blow it wide open. Because if Jasmine Crockett has walked into the most powerful room in America with nothing but a red envelope, what could possibly be inside that makes Donald Trump fix his tie? Jasmine's fingertips rest on the red envelope, her nails barely grazing the surface. Then tap. Another tap. A final tap echoes through the chamber, sharp and deliberate, like a gavel striking from a courtroom in the future. She doesn't glance at Trump, doesn't even acknowledge the chair. Her eyes lock onto the cameras, steady and unblinking, her voice cutting through the silence. For the girls who never had time, the words land heavy, pulling the oxygen out of the room. Jim Jordan leans in toward a colleague, murmur, his hand covering his mouth like he's guarding state secrets. Elise Stefanik's smile, polished for the cameras, begins to crack at the corners. Her gaze darts toward the envelope, then snaps back to Jasmine's face. Then Jasmine delivers the scalpel. The man who thinks he owns this country once asked a 14-year-old girl to call him Mr. D. A sharp gasp slips from somewhere in the gallery. Trump's smirk falters, his jaw tightening under the lights. Jordan's whispering turns quick and clips Stefanik, blinking twice in rapid succession. Trump's fingers curl into a loose fist against the polished wood of the table. Between them, the red envelope sits like a live charge, daring someone to touch it. In a small Ohio living room, a retired teacher leans forward, eyes fixed on the screen. She remembers Anita Hill in 1991, her words rippling through a room full of men who didn't want to hear them. Feels like history's knocking again, she whispers to herself, her grip tightening around a cold mug of coffee. Jasmine lets the moment simmer, unhurried, unblinking. The silence swells until even the gallery stops shifting in their seats. Cameras click, 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 like frantic typewriters chasing every angle of the standoff. She leans in, slightly lowering her tone until the words feel private yet amplified. I will not say her full name, not yet, but I will speak for her and for the others. Because this house, this Capitol, never did. The air hums now, coiled and trembling with anticipation. Reporters grip their pens like weapons, sensing a strike is coming. Trump glances at the envelope, then looks away, but not before Jasmine catches it. Still, the seal remains unbroken, its red paper catching the overhead lights. Untouched. Unexploded. She hasn't even opened it yet. So what in God's name is inside Jasmine's hand slides into her blazer pocket fingers, closing around something small and solid. She pulls out a matte black flash drive stamped with a silver federal seal, its edges worn like it's been handled too many times. Without a word, she leans forward and plugs it into the console. A small green light beep signals it's live. The chamber seems to lean in as a faint crackle fills the speakers. Then a voice, female, young, trembling, breaks through the static. He wore gold rings, a gold watch. The other men called him boss. A beat of silence, and then almost a whisper. They said he'd be president one day. Trump's hand twitches before slamming down on the desk with a sharp thud. Lies, this is defamation. His voice ricochets off the marble walls, but the chair's gavel, bang, cuts him off mid-shout. Mr. Trump, you are not recognized to speak. The audio continues steady and merciless. The girl describes the smell of expensive cologne, the weight of a hand on her shoulder, the laughter of men who thought they were untouchable. In the back row, a reporter's pen stops moving, frozen mid-word. The room feels smaller, tighter, as if the walls are leaning in. In a living room in Georgia, an elderly woman sits on the edge of her chair. She presses a hand to her mouth and whispers, "My God." They're finally saying it. Her granddaughter seated beside her doesn't look away from the screen. She just nods, eyes wide. Trump pushes back in his chair, muttering under his breath, but the mic picks up every word, muffle, muffle, like a man cursing at ghosts. Jordan leans toward him, whispering fast, while Stefanik stares straight ahead, blinking as if that will make the moment pass faster. But it doesn't. The voice keeps playing. Then the recording ends with a soft click. The silence that follows isn't relief. It's heavier than the words that filled it. Jasmine steps back from the console, folding her hands behind her back like a soldier at attention. She doesn't need to look at Trump to know his jaw's locked. She scans the room, slowly meeting eyes one by one, letting the weight of what they've all heard settle. That she says softly was just the first match. Her gaze drifts to the unopened red envelope, the faintest glint in her eye. The real fire is still coming. The chair clears his throat, voice low. Dr. Caleb Morrison, please step forward. A tall man in a gray suit rises from the second row, moving with the steady confidence of someone who doesn't waste words. The microphone clicks as he sits, right hand raised for the oath voice, calm as steel, "I do." Jasmine watches him, the way a general watches her best soldier take the field. Dr. Morrison adjusts his glasses, opening a thin black case with movements so precise they almost seem mechanical. Inside, layered sheets of high-resolution images gleam under the chamber lights. Snap, he pulls the first one free. This, he begins, his tone clipped and unshakable, is a satellite thermal scan taken July 7th, 2003. Little St. James. He holds it up for the room, and the overhead projector throws it across the wall, a swirling mosaic of reds, oranges, and yellows. The edges are dark, but the center glows like embers in a dying fire. A faint whir comes from a TV camera zooming in. Morrison taps a specific spot with a capped pen. "This is the helipad," he says. "And here these are heat signatures concentrated in 2 guest villas." The markings pulse on the image, unmistakable. A low murmur ripples through the gallery. Somewhere in the second row, a journalist leans forward, scribbling fast. Older viewers watching at home squint at the image, and in more than a few living rooms, heads nod slowly. It's the same kind of cold, undeniable proof they remember from Watergate, the kind that makes denial look foolish. Dr. Morrison flips to the next sheet, F-whip. "We cross-referenced FAA flight logs from that day with registered aircraft IDs. He points to a small string of numbers in the corner of the thermal image. "This tail number." He pauses, letting the silence swell until it presses into every corner of the chamber. Trump shifts in his seat just barely. Jasmine notices. So does the camera. Click, click, click. Morrison looks up, scanning the faces before him. His voice doesn't rise, but every syllable lands like a hammer. Matches one man's jet. He sets the paper down slowly, the sound of it thud against the wood. Guess whose Jasmine doesn't wait for the murmurs to die. She reaches into her folder, the paper inside shuff, as she pulls out a thick stack of documents. With one smooth motion, she lays them on the table, the thud echoing under the chamber's dome. These, she says, her voice steady, are FAA flight logs archived and verified. She slides the top page forward so the nearest camera can zoom in. Side by side are printed columns of dates, destinations, and tail numbers, perfectly matching the satellite data Dr. Morrison just revealed. Then she pulls out another sheet flip and places it next to the logs. And here she continues are excerpts from Jeffrey Epstein's personal calendar. Red boxes mark missing entries, dates that were erased from the public record, dates that match the flights exactly. The reaction is instant. On the GOP side, chairs scrape against the floor as members lurch forward. Point of order, one shouts, "This is out of scope." Another pounds a fist against the desk. Thump, thump, thump. The gallery buzzes like a hornet's nest. Trump leans into his mic, his voice rising. "That's not my handwriting." The words are half snarl, half laugh, but the tremor underneath betrays him. Cameras snap, click, 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 catching every twitch of his jaw. Jasmine tilts her head, a slow, deliberate movement. "Then who wrote your flight logs?" she asks, letting the pause sharpen into a blade. "Santa Claus." The line lands with surgical precision, slicing through the noise. The gallery freezes for a beat. Somewhere in the press row, a reporter's pen stops mid-stroke. In online chat streams across the country, comments pour in. "Santa, he just admitted it's his plane. Those dates match exactly. Holy hell, this is big." Jasmine flips to another page, her finger tracing the lines of ink. "These dates, these destinations, they don't just tell a story about one man," she says. "They tell a story about a network. And this list," she taps the paper, tap, 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 "could destroy more than one career." Trump shifts in his seat again, slower this time, as if the wood beneath him has turned to glass. The air in the chamber feels heavier, the silence more dangerous than the shouting. And the list on the table waits patient, knowing its time is coming. Jasmine doesn't reach for the stack of flight logs again. Instead, her hand slides into the side of her folder and pulls out something larger, thicker, a sealed craft envelope stamped Exhibit E42 in bold black ink. She lays it flat on the table, the thud resonating under the vaulted ceiling. The cameras lean in with a faint whir, focusing on the envelope's heavy paper and unbroken seal. Jasmine rests her palm on top, as if weighing the choice to open it. Inside, she says, her voice, carrying like a bell, are 31 names connected to this network. Her fingers hook under the flap, tearing it open in one clean ripe. She slides out a stiff cardstock sheet, the names printed in sharp black type, but half of them hidden under thick blackout bars. The sight draws a low murmur from the gallery. These black bars, Jasmine says, lifting the sheet so the press cameras can capture it, don't protect victims. They protect predators. Her tone is measured, but her eyes burn as she sweeps them across the chamber. In the second row of the gallery, a woman in her 40s raises a trembling hand to her cheek. She wipes away a single tear, the motion quick, almost furtive, but not quick enough to escape the notice of a camera lens. Click, click, click. She lowers her gaze, clutching the strap of her bag like a lifeline. Jasmine lays the page down, gently tapping it, once tap. "These are not faceless names," she says. "Each one is tied to a choice, a meeting, a transaction. Some have been redacted for decades, and some are sitting in this very room." The chamber shifts uncomfortably, the sound of fabric swish, and chairs creak, blending with a growing murmur. Trump stares at the list, expression tight, his hand gripping the edge of the table. Jordan leans in, whispering, eyes darting toward the door. Jasmine doesn't move to reveal the unredacted names, not yet. She lets the weight of their existence press down on the room. The question, she says, her voice dropping just enough to make people lean forward, is not if they'll be revealed. She lets the pause stretch the silence, now sharp as glass. But what happens when the redacted speak for themselves? The hallway outside Jasmine's DC apartment is silent, except for the faint hum of the elevator ding. She turns the key in her door click and notices a shadow on the welcome mat. At first, it looks like a child's toy slumped over. But when she kneels, the breath catches in her throat. It's a doll porcelain dressed in a tattered white dress. The head is missing the neck, a jagged stump. A note is stapled to the chest, the paper creased and dirty. "Say one more name. We dare you." Her hand doesn't shake as she picks it up, but her jaw sets like steel. The room behind her is dark. The city noise outside feels muffled, distant. She steps inside, placing the doll, And note on the counter, the thud of porcelain against wood echoing through the empty kitchen. The phone is already in her hand. She scrolls, swipe, and presses the call button. It rings twice before a warm, steady voice answers. Baby Jasmine exhales. Mama. Her mother's tone doesn't rise, doesn't break. I saw the hearing. You did what you had to do. Jasmine glances at the doll. They're trying to scare me. The voice on the other end is calm as stone. Then they forgot who raised you. For a beat, neither of them speaks. The silence is not fear, it's resolve. Outside, a siren wails in the distance, fading as quickly as it came. Jasmine leans against the counter, gripping the phone tighter. In her mind flashes Edward Snowden's hotel room door. Knock, knock, knock. Sharon Watkins staring down Enron's collapse. Anita Hill walking into that Senate chamber. Different faces, different decades, same warning signs. Her mother's voice cuts through the memory. You gonna keep going? Jasmine doesn't hesitate. Yes. A pause. Then keep your eyes forward. She hangs up and turns toward the doll one last time. The headless figure sits motionless under the kitchen light, the note still pinned across its chest. The letters seem darker now, ink bleeding into the paper's creases. Jasmine folds the note slowly, creep, and slips it into her desk drawer. She looks out the window at the Capitol dome glowing against the night sky. If they're this scared now, what happens when she drops the rest? Morning light spills over the Capitol steps, turning the marble a pale gold. By 8 o'clock, they're no longer empty. Protesters stand shoulder to shoulder, silent but unshakable, holding signs that read, "Truth has no party, and names will be spoken." The only sounds are the flap-flap of banners in the wind and the low murmur of cameras positioning for the perfect shot. There are no chants, no shouting, just a wall of presence. Veterans in faded service caps, mothers with strollers, students with backpacks. They stand in the cold breath misting in the air, each pair of eyes locked on the dome above, as if daring it to look back. A few clasp hands, the grip firm, steady, unyielding. Across the street, news vans line up beep beep as they reverse into position. Reporters go live, their voices pitched low, like narrators at the start of something bigger than they can measure. In homes across America, viewers recognize the look, the calm, before the break. At 9:17 a.m., Jasmine's campaign site goes down. The tech team scrambles messages, ping, 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 in rapid succession. Too many visitors, too many donations hitting the server at once. Within an hour, they're tracking record numbers. Inside the West Wing of Mar-a-Lago chaos, Trump paces the carpet, muffling his steps, phone glued to his ear. Two senior advisors are gone before noon, one fired over a text, another learning from a reporter's tweet. Staffers exchange glances, voices dropping to whispers. News networks flash split screens, on one side the immovable crowd at the Capitol, on the other breaking headlines about inner circle shakeups. In living rooms, coffee shops, and subway cars, people lean toward the nearest screen. For the first time, the story feels less like politics and more like a tide turning. A retired steelworker in Pennsylvania watches from his recliner, arms crossed. Been waiting for this my whole life, he mutters. A young mother in Oregon wipes flour from her hands, and phone propped on the counter, her eyes not leaving the feed. The audience isn't just watching anymore, they're rooting. By mid-afternoon, the crowd on the steps has doubled, then tripled. The silence has weight now, pressing against the doors of the Hill. The dome looms above them still, but the air carries the low hum of something on the verge of breaking. Can a wave like this be stopped before it swallows the Hill? By nightfall, the crowd at the Capitol still hasn't thinned. Their silhouettes are lit by the golden dome above, unmoving like sentinels keeping watch. Inside her office, Jasmine's phone buzz with a call from an unlisted number. She answers, listens, and without a word begins gathering her things. The message is clear: biometric clearance required. 3 levels of federal authorization. A meeting not on the public schedule in a wing most lawmakers never see. The kind of summons that comes without explanation and without refusal. When she steps outside, the press is waiting, lenses click, click, click in a strobe of flashes. Questions fire through the cold night air, overlapping into chaos. But one cuts through them all. What do you say to those still protecting him? Jasmine stops at the top of the steps, the murmurs in the crowd dimming to a hush. She meets the reporter's gaze, her voice steady enough to slice through the noise. History will remember who stood where. No follow-up needed. She turns, walking toward the black SUV idling at the curb. The ride is silent except for the low hum of the engine. Through tinted glass, she watches the Capitol steps disappear, replaced by shadowed streets and flashing security gates. The SUV slows, then passes through the first checkpoint, beep, beep, the barrier lifting. At the second gate, an armed guard scans her credentials, then gestures toward a narrow entrance. A palm scanner chirps, a retinal reader flashes green. The door clicks open. Inside, the lighting shifts. No marble grandeur here, just steel walls and low corridors, the air dense and still. A man in a dark suit meets her without introducing himself, leading her down a long hallway. Their footsteps echo against the concrete floor, each one magnified in the silence. He stops at an unmarked door, turns a key, and steps aside. Jasmine hesitates for half a second before crossing the threshold. The room is windowless, its single table bare, except for a single closed file. The air feels heavier here, almost claustrophobic, like the walls are listening. Behind those closed doors, she'll hear the one thing no one wanted her to know. The Dallas air feels thicker than the cold in D.C., heavy with heat and the smell of cut grass. Jasmine steps out of the car onto her childhood street, the gravel crunch beneath her heels. Neighbors step out onto porches, arms crossed but faces warm, nodding like they've been waiting for this moment. Old Mr. Hanley, who used to fix her bike chain when she was 9, tips his cap. Mrs. Alvarado from 3 doors down calls out, "We saw you on TV, baby." Their voices carry the pride of people who've seen her climb every rung and know exactly how high the fall could be. She reaches the small brick house, its paint faded, but still solid. The porch swing creaking in the warm breeze. Her mother is waiting at the door apron, still on a kitchen towel in one hand. They don't speak at first, just hold each other in a hug that says what words can't. Inside, the house smells like collard greens and cornbread. Family photos line the hallway, their frames a little crooked, just like they have always been. On the coffee table sits a worn leather book, its corners frayed pages yellowed with age. Her mother picks it up and presses it into Jasmine's hands. "Found this while cleaning," she says. Jasmine flips it open and stops at a page halfway through. In handwriting from decades ago, a single sentence stares back at her. "If someone just said my name, I wouldn't feel so invisible." Her chest tightens. She runs her fingers over the ink as if she can touch the moment it was written. The voices of the hearing room fade in her mind, replaced by the voice of that younger version of herself, the girl who wanted someone to see her to hear her. Her mother watches quietly, then says, "You've been saying their names. Don't stop now." Jasmine nods, the diary still open in her hands, her reflection caught in the living room window. Outside, the street is calm, but she feels the storm waiting. She closes the diary with a soft thump, holding it like a promise. The fight in D.C. is no longer just political, it's personal. It always was. The next hearing won't just speak truth, it will name it. The kitchen table is old oak, its surface marked with decades of coffee rings and knife scratches. Tonight it's covered in neat stacks of files, a laptop glowing in the center, and a half-empty pot of black coffee. Clink. Jasmine sets down her mug and leans forward, eyes locked on the 2 people sitting across from her. On her left is Mariah Ellis, a civil rights lawyer with 30 years in courtrooms where the stakes were life and death. On her right, David Chen, an investigative journalist whose exposés have toppled more than one political career. They've both flown here quietly, no social media posts, no paper trail. Jasmine flips open a file, the pages whip whip as she spreads them out like cards. "We've got the evidence," she says, tapping a photo of the redacted names. "But evidence alone doesn't break a system, people do. We need voices." Mariah nods, sliding a legal pad across the table. "We match each piece of documentation to a survivor willing to speak. We pair their testimony with the paper trail timelines, flight logs, transfers. If we make it airtight, they can't bury it in committee." David leans in his fingers, tap tap on the laptop keys. "And we film it all. Long form, uncut and backed up in 3 locations. Once it's out there, no court order in the country can stuff it back in the dark." Jasmine glances at the clock on the wall, its second hand ticking click, click, click through the heavy silence. She remembers black and white photos of the Freedom Riders in the 1960s huddled around tables like this one, knowing they were about to make history and that some might not live to see the end of it. Mariah pushes a thick folder toward Jasmine. 12 confirmed survivors are ready. 4 more will decide by the end of the week. They've been waiting for someone to give them a microphone. Jasmine rests her hand on the folder, the weight of it more than just paper. David closes the laptop with a snap, his voice dropping. Once these voices go public, he meets Jasmine's eyes, and for a moment all three sit in stillness. The system can't put the lid back on. By morning, Jasmine's inbox is a storm. Emails, ping, 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 without pause, voicemail notifications, stack in red digits, and the courier delivers 2 heavy boxes crammed with letters. She sets them on her desk with a thud, the sound echoing in her quiet office. The first envelope she opens is written in shaky blue ink on lined notebook paper. I was 16, it begins. I thought no one would believe me. I stopped talking for almost a year. Jasmine reads the words slowly into the camera, her voice steady, but her eyes glint with something unspoken. She reaches for the next, a printed email, the font plain, but the message searing. He told me I'd ruin his career if I spoke. That was 27 years ago, and I still hear his voice when I try to sleep. The room feels smaller with each sentence, the air heavy, thick. Then she plays an audio file from her phone. The voice is older now, but it breaks halfway through. I'm 71, and I've carried this my whole life. There's a click as the recording ends, leaving the room in silence, except for the faint hum of the camera equipment. In living rooms across the country, viewers lean forward. A nurse on her lunch break wipes her eyes. A truck driver parked at a rest stop turns up the volume. The live chat floods. God, that could be me. I've never told anyone this before. Thank you for speaking for us. Stacks of letters still sit unopened on her desk, their edges frayed from the hands that sealed them. Jasmine rests her palm on the top stack, feeling the weight not just of paper, but of years, decades, entire lifetimes. She knows that each one carries a cost. She turns back to the camera, her voice lower now. These are the stories I can share, but there are others, too raw, too dangerous to name right now. Her fingers drum, once tap against the pile. The comments keep pouring in the screen, scrolling faster than she can read. The connection is electric, intimate, unbreakable. If these are the stories she can share, what's in the ones she can't? The hearing room feels different this time. Metal detectors beep, beep at the entrance. Security agents line the walls, and every camera lens is already trained on the witness table. The air is colder than last time, as if the marble itself knows what's coming. Jasmine walks in without looking left or right. The click, click, click of shutters follows her to her seat, but she doesn't break stride. In her hands, a slim black case, locked, unmarked, and clearly heavy. She places it on the table, opens it with a soft snick, and pulls out 5 thick envelopes. Each one is sealed in red wax, the stamps gleaming under the overhead lights. She lines them up in a neat row, left to right, like a dealer laying down a hand no one wants to see. Exhibit F1, she says, sliding the first envelope forward. Inside, wire transfer receipts mapping a direct route from shell corporations in Cyprus to Deutsche Bank. The pages whip as she lays them out, each with dates, amounts, and account codes. The second envelope follows, thud dropping in front of the clerk. Exhibit F2. This one tracks the money from Deutsche Bank into a Florida trust registered under a name that's been redacted in previous hearings. Jasmine's voice doesn't waver as she reads the totals aloud, each figure heavier than the last. Trump shifts in his seat, his eyes narrowing at the table. On the GOP side, someone mutters low, low to a colleague, their knuckles white around a pen. The gallery leans forward, every breath synced to Jasmine's movements. She steps back, letting the weight of the first 2 exhibits settle in. The wax seals on the remaining 3 envelopes glint under the camera lights untouched, each one a silent promise of something worse. Jasmine's gaze sweeps the room, pausing just long enough for the tension to thicken. 3 more envelopes, she says quietly, her hand resting on the next in line, each heavier than the last. Jasmine's fingers slide across the table to the 4th envelope. The red wax seal catches the light as she lifts it, the sound of the tear rip cutting through the chamber's stillness. She draws out a stack of documents and unfolds them slowly, each page heavy, deliberate. This, she says, holding up the first sheet, is a network map. On the wall behind her, the projector flickers to life, splashing a spiderweb of names and lines across the marble. Red dots mark political donors. Black dots mark convicted offenders. The lines between them are thick, undeniable. The reaction is instant. Point of order, one voice shouts from the GOP side. Another slams a fist on the desk. Thump, thump, Thump. The chair's gavel bangs for order, but the noise only swells as more members speak over each other. Jasmine doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She steps to the edge of the table, points to a name near the center of the web. That's a sitting member of Congress, and that, her finger traces a connecting line, is a known offender sentenced in 2009. Cameras click, 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 reporters scribbling so fast their pens squeak. Trump sits rigid, his gaze locked downward at the table in front of him. He doesn't reach for the mic, doesn't even glance at the map projected on the wall. The muscles in his jaw flex once, then still. Jasmine moves to the second page, a list. These donors are all on record contributing to campaigns still active today, she says. Some of those campaigns are represented in this very room. A ripple moves through the chamber, part outrage, part dread. The chair calls for order again, voice strained. Jasmine closes the folder, sliding the papers back into the envelope, as if sealing a dangerous weapon. The shouting doesn't stop, but her silence speaks louder. Her hand hovers over the fifth and final envelope, the wax untouched. The cameras zoom in, whir, catching every detail of her expression. And then she opened the last one. Jasmine rests her palm on the fifth envelope for a beat, letting the weight of the moment settle like a held breath. The red wax glistens under the fluorescent lights. Then Crockett breaks cleanly, the sound sharp enough to pull every eye toward her hands. From inside, she draws a single sheet of cream-colored paper, edges slightly worn. She doesn't look at the page right away. Instead, her gaze sweeps the room, scanning lawmakers' press and the public gallery. Only then does she begin to read. It's a survivor's statement written in looping cursive. I was 14. I thought I was safe. I learned too late that monsters wear cufflinks. The words thud into the record, each syllable striking harder than any piece of evidence before. She continues, I told the police. The file disappeared. I told the court. The judge recused himself. I told my mother. She said we couldn't win. The room is silent now, no gavel, no murmurs, just the faint hum of the overhead lights. Halfway through, Jasmine looks up. Not at the lawmakers, not at Trump, but directly into the nearest camera lens. Her voice is steady, but there's an edge that cuts through the air. You can bury the paper. You can silence the witness. But truth doesn't stay dead. The final lines spill out like a confession and a warning all at once. If you're reading this and you know you still have time to choose the right side. Jasmine folds the paper once, twice, and sets it gently on the table. The chair moves to adjourn, but Jasmine is already on her feet. Reporters call her name. Jasmine, Jasmine, mix extended cameras whir to follow her as she walks the aisle without breaking pace. At the chamber doors, she pauses just long enough to turn back toward the cameras. Her words are not shouted, but they land with the weight of a verdict. Which side will you be on when your silence is broken? Sometimes the truth isn't easy to hear, and justice doesn't appear on its own. It takes someone brave enough to speak up. This story reminds us that when even one person dares to stand, the darkness has nowhere left to hide. Every word, every action you take can be the light that helps someone find their hope again. So when that moment comes for you, will you stay silent or will you be the one to break the silence? If what you just witnessed lit a fire in you, don't just swipe away. Like this video, share it with someone who refuses to look away from the truth, and subscribe to Hill Insights, where courage speaks louder than fear and every story counts. Turn on notifications because the next chapter, it's already in motion and it could change everything you thought you knew. Now it's your turn. What moment in this story will you carry with you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's not just watch. Let's stand, remember, and act together. This dramatized account draws strength from real battles and real people. It's not here to harm, it's here to awaken. Thank you for watching. And remember, truth doesn't vanish in the dark. It waits for someone brave enough to bring it into the light.